Let's get some analysis now with Robert Kelly, a professor in the Department of Political Science and Diplomacy at Pusan National University. He joins us now from Busan in South Korea. Welcome back to the program, Professor. South Korea has become very used to these events, but launches over Japan are rare. In fact, the last time Pyongyang launched a ballistic missile over territorial Japan was back in 2017. What could North Korea be trying to signal to Japan?
Primarily, I think that it just doesn't care that much about Japanese sovereignty, right? I mean, this is sort of North Korea acting out in a way that we've seen before. North Korea has very consciously and sort of gleefully almost sort of ignored the sovereignty of the states around it. You may recall that once North Korea launched a missile southward and it broke apart near the Philippines, and there was sort of concern something might land on people in that country. And North Koreans just have a long history of doing that. The Koreas both have an antagonistic relationship with Japan. So, if the North Koreans need to test, I mean, they're just going to ignore Japanese concerns. I don't actually think that the North Koreans intended to target Japan or anything like that, but it's just sort of generally of a piece of the fact that the North Koreans just don't really worry about the sovereign concerns and borders and airspace and so on of the states around it.
As we mentioned, this is North Korea's fifth missile launch in just 10 days. Why do you think Pyongyang is ramping up its provocations right now?
Well, I think the North Koreans have sort of like a regular missile program that they want to establish for the purposes of deterrence against the region around them. And they held that at bay for a while. They sort of were quiet for a while, as your reporter mentioned, also because of the Trump-Kim negotiations a while ago. President Trump engaged the leader of North Korea for a while, and the North Koreans put everything on pause. And so if they're going to go back and actually sort of reinvest in the program, that means they've had this sort of 5-year hiatus, and there's probably a fair amount to catch up on. But again, I think that the larger issue, I think the structural issue in the background is that the North Koreans have decided that they want to have a full spectrum nuclear and missile program. And that just doesn't mean just the big ones. That also means, that can strike the United States, but shorter range ones that they can use to strike Guam or Japan. They want smaller nuclear warheads, perhaps they can use on the battlefield. They want to put nuclear warheads on submarines. I mean, all of this is part of a much longer effort, I think, over several decades to build out a full spectrum program. And so these launches are just going to continue to happen. And we really don't have a lot of options on the outside. It's not really clear what we can do, even though we keep saying we're going to, have a strong response. I just don't know what we can do.
Looking at the US foreign policy with regards to North Korea, the previous President Donald Trump became the first sitting US leader to meet with the North Korean president back in 2018 as he tried to bring Pyongyang in from the cold. How is Joe Biden dealing with the North? How would you describe the Biden administration's approach to Pyongyang?
Yeah, I think the Biden administration has just been overwhelmed by a lot of other things, most obviously the war in Ukraine, right? Inflation at home. There are concerns about sort of the divisiveness and polarization in American politics. And I think Korea has sort of slipped down the ranking here. That might actually be one of the reasons you ask, why the launches. It might be one of the reasons why the North Koreans do these things. There's a debate about whether or not they use these tests and launches to try to attract attention. They just like being ignored and being treated as sort of like the fake or failed Korea. We know that from regime language. But I don't think that the Biden people have much other than sort of the status quo. And I'll be honest, I don't actually blame them too much. I mean, Trump spent a lot of effort and he got nothing for it, right? I mean, if we're going to have summits, if we're going to meet the North Koreans, then they've got to offer us something. And the one serious offer the North Koreans made to Donald Trump in Hanoi just wasn't really that meaningful. It just wasn't a particularly good swap, which is why Trump walked away from it. So ultimately, if we're going to have a deal, and I think the Americans actually genuinely would like that, the North Koreans need to be willing to negotiate on the issue that interests us, the West, the rest of the world, which is nuclear weapons. Sanctions are important, but we really wanted the North Koreans to actually talk to us about the nukes, and they're just not doing that. And I think that's why the talks are just kind of frozen.
Okay, Professor Robert Kelly, we'll have to leave it there, but great to get your analysis as always. Thank you.